I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it, and that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. This podcast is brought to you by Jarhead Diagnostics. Jarhead Diagnostics manufactures in-house diagnostic equipment and storage solutions, as well as distributes for companies like Pico, ATS, and TopDon. One of my favorite tools that I've bought from Brandon and Jarhead Diag is the case for the U-Scope. If you don't have a U-Scope, you probably should, but if you have one, you got to get one of these 3D printed cases, has a magnet on it, has a full-size BNC lead that you can connect to, and it gets rid of the weak point of that scope, which is the mini BNC connection, which is pretty fragile. This case makes this thing nice and secure and makes it an even better tool than it was. So check out jarheaddiag.com. The link is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. We have got Auto Rescue Tools and Isaac Rodell as a sponsor for this podcast. Hey guys, if you're looking for programming laptops, you want the laptop set up ready to go for programming control modules on vehicles, you need key cutting equipment, you need diagnostic tools, Isaac is your guy. Has all that stuff available for purchase, and the support that he offers along with the purchase has been outstanding. I bought some stuff from him in the past. I got my Dolphin key cutting tool from him several years back. And again, the support has been phenomenal. Helped me out along the way with anything additional I needed to make it work for me. Also, for the month of June 2023, they've got Autel updates for sale. So make sure to check that out as well. Again, that's autorescuetools.com. The link will be in the show notes. Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. I'll be your host. Today on the show, I've got Matt Fanslow and Dutch. They've both been on the podcast before, so you should be familiar with them. Today, we're going to talk about side work. pretty common in our industry. Heck, most of us have done it. I know I've done a ton of it. But this is where we're doing work at our homes, in our driveways, in our garages, that's outside of our place of employment or normal, whatever repair facility that we actually work in. It's typically doing work for cash, or at least doing it significantly cheaper than what a shop would charge because, well, you don't have the overhead at home, right? And again, really common in our industry, especially for younger people that are just trying to make a little bit of cash to pay the bills, right? And our conversation is about if there is some unintended consequences from doing this, okay? I mean, right, what's the big deal about making a little extra money to pay your bills? Especially if it's tight as it is and you just need that little extra to get by. What's the problem with that? What are the long-term effects of that on us and the industry and our pay? That's what we're going to talk about today. Matt and Dutch are going to bring, some pretty experienced views to this conversation. I'm going to bring my perspective as a 20-some-year-old technician because I did a lot of side work back in the day. I actively avoid it now, but I did a lot of it when I first bought my house in my 20s because I needed the money. So I'm going to bring my perspective and how I looked at things back then, and they're going to bring theirs. This is a really good conversation. I really enjoyed this when I went through and edited the episode. I enjoyed the conversation just as much the second time as the first time through. I mean, when you get these two guys on together, they have so much to offer as far as wisdom and insight into the automotive industry. And I would recommend anybody in the industry listen to this, but especially young people, you can get a lot out of this. Just as far as, what you should be doing with your career, ways that you can advance, and who you should be working for as far as a shop or shop owner goes. So listen to the whole thing. Great stuff. Really like this one, but I'll quit rambling. We'll get into the interview here. My goal is kind of to play the devil's advocate to side work because I have a feeling at the end of the day, I'm probably going to agree with what you guys have to say or your opinions on side work, how it affects the industry. But that's only come to me based on my age and the time I've spent in the industry. But what I want to do is bring 22-year-old Sean's perspective on side work and what I did at that point to the table and just see what you have to say from the different, perspectives that I would have or different points that I bring up. Cause yeah, I did a ton of side work in my 20s. There's no getting around that.
You have to understand that what side work does is twofold. Number one, it sets expectation in the marketplace. And number two, it devalues what the technician's skills and abilities are, by reducing his skills and abilities to that of a commodity. When that happens, the long-term effects of that are felt to this day. This is the reason why technicians are, as I said in our other podcast, woefully underpaid in my estimation. And the reason that they're woefully underpaid is because the general public always knows a guy. There's always a guy who's going to do the work at their house or at his house on the side for a whole bunch less money, which means, therefore, if he's doing it and is able to, in their mind, earn a living doing that, then everybody else in the industry is ripping them off. And that's a problem because the general public has absolutely no idea. Indeed, most techs have no idea about the numbers of what it takes to run a business and the expenses that are associated with it. Consequently, the guy just thinks short term. It was a nice day. I didn't have anything planned. I'm going to knock this out and I'll make more money in a shorter period of time than I would if I was working the whole day. And it's cash, no taxes. So for him, it's a win-win. But working together with that, in conjunction with that, is that the fact that most technicians have zero money sense and this is not an insult. I'm not saying that guys are stupid. I'm saying that they haven't been taught. They don't know what a budget is. They don't know. You talk to guys like we talked about before, and you say, okay, what are you doing for your retirement? And they're like, I'm playing the lottery, man. That's what I'm doing for my retirement. What do you mean retirement? Okay. Do you have 3 to 6 months of your paycheck sitting in the bank for emergencies? 3 to 6 months, man. You're lucky if I got 3 to 6 days. What are you talking about? But there's that Harley. Now, I was thinking about that Harley. I can go out, and if I just do a few more side jobs a week, I can have the money to pay for that Harley that I want. And that's a problem. Financial illiteracy. And it's not, and unless you've been taught it, because you think about all the things that we learn in school, right? We learn about history, we learn about science, we learn some math, right? We learn about a whole social studies, we learn a whole bunch of stuff, and nobody ever sits down and says, let's figure out a household budget. Let's see if we're earning X amount of dollars per week, how much of that money is going to taxes? How much can we expect to get on net? Let's look and see how much is it going to cost for us to rent in our area a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom apartment until we can afford to put money down and buy our own house. That financial literacy doesn't exist because it's not valued. Most techs, their vision when it comes to money is limited to the end of the week or the end of the day.
Well, I wonder, is that more something of just someone being young in general in today's day and age, or do you think it has something to do with our field and the people who get into it? Maybe a combination thereof of not having that, because I can definitely tell you I really didn't when I was younger either.
Well, part of it is it is a combination. In my view, it's from their parents who have abrogated their responsibility to teach their kids about money. That's the first thing. If you're brought up in a home where there isn't any money and you have to see your father working 2 jobs to make it, you have a greater sense of what's going on, in my view. If you have to watch your pennies, if you're doing that, you can get a better sense of money. A lot of kids don't have any sense of money at all. They don't know what a dollar is. Then you have guys that are going out in this field who are young and they have no expenses. They may be living with their parents, or they may be living in an apartment with a few other guys. And all they're really concerned about is now, the motorcycle, the toolbox, the tool truck, and that's it. You tell a guy who's in his 20s, hey, he's 23 years old, what are you doing for the retirement? He's going to laugh at you because he's going to tell you he's not going to live that long. He's going to die young and leave clean underwear. That's what's going to happen. So that is a result of failure of education for both public school and, more importantly, at home. Sorry, Matt, didn't mean to get on my soapbox.
No, I'm just questioning why I'm here, because I would catch myself echoing all of that just at a much less intelligible manner. But I agree, it's the devaluing aspect is really difficult to get around. Just like lost leaders, the same thing with them operating at A for cash, and then B, significantly less overhead, and trying to convey certain. It's frustrating that you talk to a tech, or really probably any employee, about their home finances, and it makes sense, right? I need to make this much money to pay these bills. These bills come every month. I have to make those payments or bad things happen. And yet somehow there's a disconnect when it comes to the shop. The shop has these bills too, and these other bills. So, understanding why we have to do the things we do, why we have to set the labor rates where they're at, why we have to mark up the parts to where they're at, why we have to try to enable you to produce X amount of hours or work per week so that the shop can pay its bills and thus you, so that you can go home and pay your bills. And now you're kind of weakening that kind of that foundation of the shop pricing by going and doing stuff on the side, and maybe unwittingly, but it's a problem. And then also, I'm not sure how much you kind of get into the reasons of it, right? How much of it is I need extra money? How much of it is ego? Meaning, you run into somebody, they're complaining about their car. Instead of handing them the card to the shop, it's like, oh, I could take care of that. Especially if the person is complaining about how much a shop, maybe not even your shop, a shop wants to charge you for a certain service, whatever that is. Pick on brakes. Like, oh my God, they want to charge me $400 to do front brakes. Really? I could do that for $300. Really? Yeah. And you are pocketing quite a substantial amount of money for the amount of effort and work you're going to put into it. All the whole time is now you've just changed the market, and it's you're hurting yourself by doing it. Maybe not immediately, but you're just setting this chain of events and setting this chain of events occurring that ultimately hurts you in the long run. And then the other thing I was going to throw in, something that I think Dutch or Robert already
just call me
touched
Dutch.
on. The Dutch already touched upon a little bit is a certain percentage of side work is symptomatic of an underlying cause of our trade, if that makes sense. Like it's a symptom. If you're doing this work because you need extra money and not because spending issues, which you may have, ultimately you may have, but more so because the income is not there, that's symptomatic of an underlying issue the trade has. But in fact, by doing the side work, you are helping perpetuate that issue.
Is it chicken or the egg, right? So as a young person, if you're to come tell me this and say, hey, you could be making more money, maybe in the near future, maybe in the far out from now future, you could be making more money if you stop doing side work and recommend those people go to the shop. I would look at you and tell you, I know the guy who runs my shop. I know the guy who owns that shop. If he makes more money, he's keeping it. He's going to buy something for himself. Maybe he'll put it into the shop. He'll buy some equipment or fix something that's broken. Who knows? But he definitely isn't going to pay me anymore if he makes more money. So what in that point, what reason do I have not to make that little bit extra money on the side? Because I don't believe that's coming back to me in any way, shape, or form. And again, I'm speaking from a 22-year-old perspective here.
Well, certainly that's absolutely possible. And it's probable, in my estimation, in most shops, because that shop owner has to be taught. Number one, when you give somebody a card and say, hey, come to my shop, what you should be doing is writing your name on the back of it. Then you tell your boss. I saw John Jones the other day. I saw him at the supermarket. He said he's having problems with his brakes. When that car comes into the shop, I expect that I'm going to be the tech that's going to be working on it. I brought you this business, right? Business you wouldn't have had before. So I expect to reap my share of the rewards. If you're continually making referrals like that, you're lining your pocket as well as that of the shop owner. Can I compel the shop owner to say, I'm going to give you a raise? No. But you can prove your worth if you were to leave. That is the leverage that you have to get what you want. If you're making the recommendations, if people are coming to you with your business card or with the shop's business card and your name on it, and you're keeping track of them, as you should be, then you now have leverage to say, listen, because of my referral network that I've been doing and networking, handing out cards, giving them to parents, doing all the things that I've been doing, we received this past month or this past week, whatever period of time, X amount of dollars of revenue that we wouldn't have. If you're continuing to do that, if you're approaching it as part of your job to generate revenue, then you have leverage. If he doesn't step up when you say, listen, I think we need to talk about, I'd like to earn more per hour or have increased benefits or whatever it is that's important to you. Now you have leverage to get what you want, hoping that you're going to bring in the business and he's going to notice it. And he is going through the generous nature of his heart to give this to you is foolish. This is business. Get what you want by documenting your contribution. And you can also do that not only in new business, but you can do that in time. According to the Department of Labor, the last study that I saw that was that the average technician turned approximately 35 hours a week. That was the latest DOL that I saw. Well, if you're consistently hitting 50, 60, 70 hours a week, your absence, and it's not a threat, you want to have a discussion, an amenable civil discussion about your value and what you're bringing your value to the table. Because right now, technicians have the upper hand. This isn't like when I was growing up. It's not. Competent, qualified technicians have the upper hand. Well, use it to your advantage. And I'm telling you this as a business owner. Okay? I should be the guy keeping my yip shut and never mentioning this because this could theoretically be used against me, right? If I'm one of those guys that the 22-year-old you is talking to who doesn't want to share anything, I've just cut my own throat and I've given you the ammunition to do it, the knife to do it. This is a business. So you approach him with business. It's not personal. And I'm not telling you to be, and I didn't hear you put the disclaimer about it, but this is the way I talk. So I'm not telling you to be a dick about it. Okay. You don't have to be an asshole, but you're going to, what happens is guys work and they don't document. It's hard to argue with documentation. And you can approach him if you want. You can do it silently. You can do, you can say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work really hard at generating more business for my shop. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to do the things. And you can tell him that you're going to do that, but you risk, if you don't generate any revenue, any additional revenue, you're going to look like you're kind of lousy at it, which in truth you will be. Okay. But if he now has a stack of business cards and that stack grows every week because you're doing the things that you need to do to promote your business, and that's the way you have to think about it, your business, because your check depends on it, then he's got no place to go. Because if he says, I'm not doing that, you earn enough money now, or I'm paying you too much, or any other reason, well, you have the documentation then, don't you, to go to your next prospective employer and say, this is what I've done. I was doing X amount of hours before. Now, if we review my paperwork, you can see that I went to this location, did this. What you're doing is you are acting as a businessman promoting yourself and the value that you bring to the business. Make sense?
Definitely.
We really need to call attention to something he mentioned a couple of times was revenue generation. That I get it. If you're a technician, your quote unquote job is to service, maintain vehicles. But in the back of your head, even if management doesn't say anything to you, in the back of your head, you have to be thinking, my job is to generate revenue for the shop. That may be in the form of producing repaired vehicles or serviced vehicles, but also bringing in new business, bringing back old business. A customer left disgruntled a few years ago. You ran into him at the grocery store and you got to talking about it and explain, pulling back the curtain a little bit and mending fences. And now they're starting to bring their vehicle back because they generally enjoy bringing their vehicle to you, enjoyed as much as I enjoys bringing a car to the repair shop, but generally had no issues genuinely until one bad experience, and then you did the due diligence to mend that fence, and now they're back. A good customer is coming back, and just like he says, keep track of that stuff. Keep track of what you're bringing to the table, because techs have the upper hand. They really do. Maybe don't know it, but they do.
And there's two important points here. I don't want anybody to think that when I say revenue generation, or as Matt did, is key, because that's a key component, it has to be done ethically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it should go without saying, you don't sell stuff that doesn't need to be done. If the car's got 50,100 miles on it, you don't have to say, well, the manufacturer specifies that you, or recommends that you replace your shocks at 50,000 miles if there is no reason to replace them. If the form and function is as it should be, you don't make that recommendation. You can plant the seed. Hey, I tell you what we're going to do. The manufacturer specifies that at 50,000 miles, these things should be checked. We check them and they're fine. We're going to keep an eye out for you over the next period of time, 6 months, a year. And when it gets to the point where we think that they need to be replaced, we'll let you know. Right now, they're fine. Don't worry about it. Save your money. And what have you just done? You've just engendered trust. Never sell that which isn't needed. That's a really key component.
Probably should amend it to be ethical.
Yeah.
Revenue generation. Something I assume, but you're exactly right.
Because we know, and all of us have worked for. I started off in a Sunoco station, a two-bay Sunoco station. The wagon wheel had been out for quite a while, but we all know that there are guys whose attitude is, if I don't do this to them, somebody else will. My job is to sell. I'm in a sales position, and it's been a slow week. And so that Toyota shock absorber, that Toyota strut, showing some signs of seepage. Well, you remember that Toyota came out with that TSB where they actually had line drawings of this is acceptable, this isn't. Because at the dealership, they were getting so many return that they were fine, that they actually had to say, knock it off, guys. A little seepage, until it reaches this point, leave it alone. Because they were having to warranty all these out. You remember this? This was a while back, probably before some of you guys were born. But that was something that was going on. So you have to be ethical in what it is that you're doing. And you have to constantly prove your value.
Well, I definitely agree with the ethical part. Now, I'll tell you this, when I was doing a ton of side work as a young person, because I needed to pay my mortgage, because I bought a house way too early. I bought a house when I was 21 and the bills racked up. And I'm like, holy cow, this is expensive. Why did I do this? I got to make some extra money. I'm going to do my side work in order to get there, in order to pay the bills. Where was I going? I lost my train of thought now. Dang it. I had something I was going with and I completely
Okay, lost. You got 40 years before you get to my age. You can wind up come up with an excuse like that.
Oh, man.
Right? At your age, you shouldn't be doing this.
Right? Yeah. Was that hit my head under one of those cars or something?
While you're thinking about it, here's something I wanted to talk to you about, Matt, and that is, okay, you remember talking to your 20-something-year-old self, and hey, they want $400 and I can do it for much less. It's not only the fact that and we see this a lot. We see this a lot in the hero complex. It's not only that you're saying, oh boy, that's a lot of money. I can do it for less to help you. It's, they're ripping you off. Because you don't know anything about business and you want to make yourself look good. So the way to make yourself look good is to dog the other shop without you knowing what their pre-tax net operating profit is, how much of every dollar they're getting to keep, or any of that crap. You're going to be the hero. So the 22-year-old Sean's going to say, that's a lot of money, man. They're ripping you off. I can do that for a whole bunch less. And it all comes out in like one sentence.
Yeah.
Where I was say about the industry then?
was you don't take customers from the shop. And I always believe that is like, I cannot take customers from the shop. That is a real slippery slope because you've got the estimate right there. You can go to them and say, okay, I can do it for X amount cheaper. That's dirty. And I mean, that is literally biting the hand that feeds, right? But here's the deal. I've got at that age that I am, and my friends work at Burger King and the gas station up the road, and they have almost no money, but they still have cars, right? They still have to get around. They have to go to their jobs. I have the ability to fix the car very cheaply for them. They're not going to be customers of your shop, most likely. I mean, unless they're taking out credit cards or loans or borrowing money from somebody, they're probably not going to a professional repair shop, you know, that's charging good money for what they do. They just don't have that money to fix it. Well, I can fix it cheaper. So this is where I was going with this. I lost myself, but is there a place for somebody to do it cheaper for those people? I mean, do you even want that customer in your shop necessarily? Because I had a lot of those friends when I was young that didn't have any money or very little money, and I fixed their cars.
You know, what you do for your friends is one thing. I can't tell you how many times I fixed cars for beer. You know, because you're young and or if there was a pretty girl, then what I learned was you got right to their father. If a father was having a problem, you could fix the car. You were in like Flynn, man. It didn't matter when you were bringing him. Curfew's at 11. Show up at 12:15. Yeah, he's fine. Don't worry about it. He's an honest boy. You know that kind of stuff. That gains you all sorts of leverage. But ultimately, those people that you're fixing the cars for that aren't your friends, I mean, true friends, okay? They're more of acquaintances or outside of your general sphere of influence. They're going to be your age now, and they're going to hopefully grow older. And as they grow older, the lessons that you're teaching them are the lessons that they're going to be bringing with them when they're older. So no, that customer, I understand that they don't have any money. I do. I get it. Life is not fair. I didn't design it, engineer it, manufacture it, put a gun in their head, or force them to buy that piece of shit. Okay. I didn't tell them that they couldn't work 2 shifts, 2 jobs to get a better car. I didn't define their circumstance. All I know is that because that attitude exists where it has to be cheap, that customer is not my customer. And it holds the industry back. I don't know of anybody that goes and says, look, I've got to have surgery. I got a problem with my heart. I got to have surgery. Let me get the cheapest one around. And, you know, that doesn't happen. When it's viewed as a profession, hey, God forbid, I got in legal trouble. Let me get the lawyer who graduated last in his class, who's the cheapest lawyer that I can get, right? When there's something important, people will rise to the occasion to the very best of their ability. We have to give them credit for that. I don't want auto repair to be in that lowest price commodity. I don't want them thinking about techs that way or shops that way. That's my own prejudice. That's my own bias. Do I understand that not everybody in the world can afford my service? Absolutely. Not everybody in the world can afford a Piaget, a Patek Philippe, a Rolex. Timex is a great timepiece for somebody that wants it. That's not my customer.
Why do you think there is so much moonlighting or side work or whatever you want to call it in the automotive industry compared to others? Like you mentioned, a doctor or I don't know, like a welder or a plumber. And I'm sure there's examples of each, but you don't hear of it as frequently in other industries or trades, even of people doing this on the side. What is it about our industry that makes this so common?
Well, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit in that we see this in electricians. We see this in plumbers. If they work for a lot, you know, we see that in a lot of roofers. A lot of the trades themselves have guys that work on the side. They're working, you know.
Well, what is it about a trade then?
Well, when an individual has a skill that's marketable and doesn't require a huge investment in operating expenses, tools, and equipment. It's easy to be able to do that. If you're going to be a finish carpenter, what do you need? You need transportation to the house. You're going to need a miter saw. You're going to need a nailer. You're going to I got guys who show up as plumbers. I got more in my toolbox than they have in their entire van, including the price of the van. And it's very easy when they're mobile to go someplace and do something like that. A surgeon is not going to operate in a kitchen table. An architect is going to use his plans that he has or his software on his computer. An accountant isn't coming to your house. Right, I suppose he could, but he's not going to, because all the documentation, tax law, and everything else is going to be there with him. That's, for me, I want us to be considered as professionals, and professionals don't do this kind of stuff. If you want to earn the wages of professionals. Now, to go back to your first question, how come they're having to do it? Well, they're having to do it because a lot of owners don't know how to run their business. They don't know how to mark up properly. They don't know how to market properly. What you want, and I've been guilty of it. I'm not telling you that I'm some shining example of doing everything right. That's not the case. I'm a huge screw up in some things. No question about it. When a shop is busy, consistently busy, techs typically don't go out for side work unless they're living beyond their means. Once they live beyond their means, then they're compelled. Once they've met their food, car payment, house payment, the basics, so they don't have to worry about it. If they start buying toys, motorcycles, guns, side women.
Yeah, that'll get expensive real quick.
That gets expensive real quick. If the shop is consistently busy and the guy's consistently, I don't know of too many guys that turn a lot of hours on a regular basis that have side work. They prefer to spend the time with their family.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? When you have enough money to meet your requirements or pay your bills, and then some extra for whatever, retirement or saving up for the vacation or saving up for big purchases, whatever that may be, I guess. Don't need details. When you have enough money, typically you start valuing your free time much greater or more greatly. You want to spend that time doing the stuff you enjoy doing or with the people you care about. You don't need to feel like you need to bring in more money for something. And that's typically what I find with friends and other trades too. Like, hey, you want to help me with my roof? I'd rather not. I have better things to do. I just bought a boat. I'd like to go fishing or, whatever it is. That they just have no interest in doing it. It's like, I do that 40 hours, 50 hours a week anyways. I don't want to kill my weekend doing that too.
No, I think you guys touched on something really important there for a lot of us, myself included. My entire life, I've been very bad at this as a work-life balance and figuring that out because I'm kind of a workaholic, right? I want to be doing something. I want to be accomplishing something, working towards a goal. And a lot of us are like that, but you got to recognize, spending time with your loved ones, your family, that's what's really important at the end of the day, or at the end of your life. As grim as that is, that's what's going to matter, is actually spending that time. And we're working so that we have, the money to enjoy that stuff, right? That is the goal. But I mean, in the moment, especially when you're young, maybe you don't really recognize that. And just let's make that money. Let's see that bank account go up. I gotta work towards that goal, and nothing else matters. And heck, I have definitely been there, and I don't know, some days I'm still there.
Look, there are always people that are money motivated. It doesn't matter if they had, we'll make up a figure, $25,000 in their checking account, or $100,000 in their checking account, or $20. They're money motivated. They see money as the goal. The goal is to get the money, and that's the barometer that they use to measure their self-worth. I can afford to do this and do that. They're money motivated. Okay. If a person is money motivated, it's very, very difficult. And if they're solely money motivated, it's very difficult to have them focus on anything else, because the money represents everything to them. That's how they define themselves. Then you had guys like me for East European family, where for most people, work was something that you wind up doing, something that you had to do to be able to live and do something else. The something else is what gave your life meaning. I come from a different background where work gave a man his life meaning. Working is what gives life meaning. That's how we were defined. You know, I love my father. I worshiped him, but he didn't go to ball games with me. There was none of that sort of stuff. My father worked, and his father before him worked to provide. And he was a hero in my eyes because it didn't matter. He was a provider. And there was no higher compliment that you could give a man back when I was coming up than that is a good provider. And his definition of being a good husband wasn't that he went to Johnny's baseball games or Sarah's recitals or any of that sort of stuff. He provided. So his wife didn't have to work. Now, obviously, society has changed a whole bunch. But that's the way that I grew up, so I can't get out of it. You know, if I had mentioned it one time in another podcast, sure, if I had known then what I know now, I probably would have done some things differently. But that's because of the fact that I have a child who's challenged. So I had no idea that was in the cards. You know. I didn't plan that in the grand scheme of things, but still to this day, for somebody to say, yeah, he's a worker, that's it. That resonates with me. I'm not money motivated. I'm motivated by the desire to be of service. I have a servant's heart. By helping others, I get the rewards. That's what, in my estimation. Now, I'm not knocking those guys that are money motivated. They make the world run in many respects, certainly better than I do. But I'm only here for a short period of time, each of us. We got to step up and be counted. Money isn't everything. It really isn't. In my view. What the hell do I know?
Well,
I would say I had a similar background.
Yeah.
Dad worked, we'll just call it 3 jobs. One was carrying mail, rural carrier. And then after he was done with that, usually early afternoons, mid-afternoon, he'd go help my grandpa at the farm implement dealership. And then farming. And there's a lot of nights I remember him pulling the tractor in, shutting it off in front of the house. And, midnight, 1 a.m, shower up, and then he's back waking up to go to the post office at 5, 6 in the morning. And he did that a lot so that my mom didn't have to work. And that, I agree with you. Like, that stuff resonates with me. That was a huge, huge sacrifice on his part to do that for us. Like,
yeah, different generation, different time, What I'd like to see us in some respects go back to that kind of stuff, but I'm not in control of that. And I apologize for veering off the topic. So what I would want to see is I would want to see more owners step up and make sure that the techs always have work, which is not easy because you can market really well. You're going to average for a shop that's marketing is going to be, his marketing budget is going to be 5 to 7% approximately of gross revenues. Think about what that means every month, right? If you're doing $1 million a year in gross revenues, think about the fact that you're going to be spending $50,000 to $70,000 a year on advertising / marketing. That's a lot of money. So what happens when the shop slows down? What's the first thing they look to do to reduce expenses? So one of the first things
/ marketing,
right?
Stop advertising.
Stop advertising, right? Well, wait a minute. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face, aren't you? You need the work. People need to see your name. They need to be familiar with you. You have to be a constant at a time when you're saying, man, I don't have the money coming in. I'm down to tech, the pandemic, prices are going up. It doesn't matter. And all these things are valid reasons. Okay. But the owner behaves in a human fashion. He says, well, I'm going to cut my expenses. The problem is, as an owner, you can't cut your expenses to profitability. That's the reason why when you think about the big box store business model, they don't cut their expenses. They limit their expenses to begin with by hiring technicians that are primarily, for the most part, and this is going to sound shitty, but I don't care. They're not top tier.
I worked for Firestone just before you say this.
I know.
Explains a lot.
But when you did, you're not the same tech that you are now, right? They don't hire top tier. The very best diagnostician in your area is typically not working for a big box store, because the big box store is not going to invest in the Pico scope unless the tech does it himself. The big box store is not going to invest in original OEM equipment. The big box store is not going to pay for the VSP, right? For that. The big box store is limiting its expenses by buying, doorman parts, by buying a specific quality of part and then marking the crap up out of it and then spiffing and using bonuses to generate revenue. You typically don't have, and again, I'm sure somebody goes, well, that's BS because I work for this company and they've got 100 jillion stores out and, I get health benefits and everything. Yeah, that's the exception to the rule. Every rule is, but generally speaking, a shop owner is not going to knock his expenses back into profitability. So most shop owners don't understand their numbers. They don't understand the difference between managerial numbers and numbers for taxes, because they're two different things. A P&L is a reflection of specific activities that happened in a point in time, but you don't run your business off your P&L. You keep track on your P&L, but you don't run your business on it. You use managerial accounting. And this goes back to what we talked about before, Sean. You get a tech who's a really good tech, and he goes out of his way and he strikes out on his own. And because he doesn't know what it is he doesn't know, he never knows what it is he has to learn. And the idea of paying somebody just galls him because he's ego-driven to begin with. What do you mean I got to pay a coach? What do you mean I got to pay a consultant? What the hell are you talking about? They don't know any more than I do. Well, I don't know. This guy's running shops or has run shops that got 25% pre-tax net operating profit. Shit, you can't even tell me what pre-tax net operating profit means. It's all BS anyway. I fix cars. I know what the hell I'm doing. Really? How much money you got in savings? That's none of your effing business. Well, if you had a lot, you'd be proud enough to tell me, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that brings up a really good point, because something that Sean said earlier too, and tying it into what you're saying is, really off the cuff, I have a rough time naming, I don't know if I could come up with 5 shop owners that I know across the country that are making bank while depriving their employees. You know what I mean? Like that. Sean said something that he kind of feared, that he'd bring this work to the shop. The ESO, the evil shop owner, would line his pockets, and Sean would not really gain much. And maybe not instant gratification, but over time even may not see the benefit to that. Offhand, I have a really rough time naming shop owners that I know are making really killing it, but their employees are really not doing, I'm not saying like scraping, but profits versus compensation probably are not in that ethical area. And I know that's a really fuzzy term to use there, but I can't think of any. Most shop owners I know that have techs that we would probably agree are undercompensated, the shop owner isn't doing so hot himself or herself. They're really not. And it really just hammers home what Dutch is talking about, that they really do need to stop worrying about how to fix the vehicle and work on how to fix their business, and work on the business and get themselves out of the working in it.
Yeah, that's a very astute point. I mean, it's a great expression, is that the owner should be working on the business, not in the business. But that means being able to delegate and be able to surrender a certain amount of control. If anybody wanted to see, and I get no money, nothing from it. If you wanted to see a top tier organization, you see how Seth Thorson runs his operation, right? Multi-store owner. His techs are paid, his personnel paid very well. And that's the point. If you ran your business well, you're going to make money. You can then afford to keep, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to have to constantly train people. You don't want to have to constantly onboard people. You don't want to have to constantly deal with this day-to-day crap, right? Which bogs down so many employers. You find good people, which is not easy to do. And then you pay them well based on performance. Once that happens, everybody wins. But you're right, Sean. That there are the greedy owners, but the ones that treat people like we said, when you show them their value, they're going to continue to struggle. For me, a typical shop owner is going to want, generally speaking, and this is a broad generalization, is going to want a 20% pre-tax net operating profit. Out of every dollar that comes into the store, he wants 20 cents prior to taxes. Okay, 20%. Well, if a shop owner has a $1 million shop and he has a 20% pre-tax net operating profit at the end of the year, that means he has $200,000. Don't you think that guy has a lot more money to buy shop supplies, insofar as equipment, offer dental, offer health benefits, eye benefit, all this sort of stuff? Because he's not pressured. He doesn't feel the weight. You have a guy who doesn't understand his numbers, who feels this crushing sense of frustration. As a tech, you're at the bottom of that hill, and you're the one that's going, poop runs downhill, like I said. You're the one that's going to catch it. So that's why it's really important that techs understand the business aspect of it, so that it can help to educate their owner, if they're educated, if their owner is amenable. If not, let them go out and then run their own business. I knew of one of the guys that I started with. He was a tech for Goodyear, and he was the highest producing tech for Goodyear on the East Coast in its history. He had awards, and this guy was a machine. He was an absolute machine. And he would turn 25, 27 hours a day, every single day, day in and day out, without any question. And he knew numbers. He knew his numbers. So he struck out on his own. And he was very, very successful because he knew numbers. I never understood why guys don't want to. I know numbers are boring. It's a balance sheet. Come on. Cash flow. Come on. P&L. What are you doing? Those are the tools that you're going to need more than your Pico. Oh, this is going to upset people. More than your Pico.
Just in the UK.
More than your ATS scope. More than anything, the ability to know that what your place is and how you can make money with the business that you have and put money back is the most important attribute you can have. Because after that, you can build your business. You don't have to be the best diagnostician in the world to ton it. And the big box stores are proof of that. You just have to know business. Those gravy sucking, non-fixing, dormant installing blights upon the automotive landscape. But I'm not biased or nothing. I can know.
Well, what I'm gotten from both of you, the same thing for a message for technicians anyways that are listening to this, is that I really feel like you should know who you're working for. And obviously you know who you're working for, but I mean, do they have this kind of knowledge? Are they up on this kind of stuff? Do they know the numbers? Because if they don't answers to these questions, if you ask them what a P&L is and all this stuff, and they don't have, stuff right off the cuff, should you be working for that person? Is that the point where like, okay, maybe I do need to look somewhere else for somebody who does know this, because I actually can grow with this person. I have a potential of bringing them business, and that's going to benefit me in the long run. So, I mean, I'll tell you what, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was 22. Totally honest, because I worked for an asshole. The guy smoked crack, honestly, but it just, I didn't know any better. That's where I worked. That's what I did. And that was the best I thought I could get. But I mean, I don't know. There's more out there for anybody who's listening to this. There's more out there. Find somebody who knows what they're doing. That's the thing.
And Dutch might destroy me on this, and I probably deserve it, but you may end up similarly to what I did, where you kind of do that leverage thing with a shop owner that does not know the numbers, does not know management type things. And I do not want to convey or insinuate that I've got a handle on all of it, but I certainly understood certain things that he was overlooking. And I used that leverage of him, like, hey, this place has to grow, or we got to get more profitable to keep me around. Otherwise, this is unsustainable. We can't do the things you say you want to do. You're not doing the things that that would perpetuate what you say you want to do. So here's some ideas. And it really boiled down to one time it was the first year I worked for him. I begged him to give me a month to be the service advisor / shop manager. And I had control of everything. He would not. I told him, you cannot touch any estimates. You can't touch any invoices. Just please leave it be. And let's just see what happens. And this isn't bragging. This isn't me. It's the principles that I've picked up over the years, listening to the Dutches of the world and many others, many other resources out there that are literally handing you a lot of information for free, and then you pay some money and you get to learn even more. And it's just putting a lot of these into practice. That's all it was doing it. Execution, right? And it was by far the most profitable month he had ever had. And it wasn't that busy of a month. Like, we didn't have any more, we probably had fewer cars that month than we did in the, not combined, but the previous 2 months. So I don't know if we had, whatever number, we had 100 cars that month. In the previous 2 months, we had 120, 130 cars per month. fewer cars, but more profit per vehicle resulted in a much, much better month. And then the eyes started opening. And we're still not where we need to be. We have a lot more to do, but it started that snowball. It started correcting the ship, if you will. And as a tech, as an employee, you may have to try to do a little bit of that leveraging. And I, like Dutch said, I wasn't an a-hole about it. I wasn't, okay, maybe a little bit, but it didn't start out super a-hole-ish or condescending. It really was just trying to talk, bringing up ideas, showing data, presenting it to him. Because I'm trying to help. Long term it's self-serving, but it also brings the whole company with, and everybody in it, including him and his family. So yeah, I would like to improve my station, but hey, come with. And
a rising tide raises all boats, right?
Right. Or at least that boat, right? And it's made a huge difference. And we had to move to a different shop. At least we moved into it before it burned. That it was a much nicer facility and much larger, and the equipment purchases we could make that before we could never even dream of. I was personally shouldering a lot of the equipment purchases with a silly ego that I have, but that's what was going on. And now the shop's taken on more and more of that, really all of it. And that's what you may find yourself doing if you see the potential of where you're working at, and the other options aren't all that great either. Maybe some of that leverage could be used to help them kind of get over those speed bumps, if you will, or hurdles, or whatever we want to call them. Probably fear bumps that you can change a whole facility, a whole business, and people's lives by leveraging a little bit of that, by trying to improve the entire operation.
You just got to remember that this is, because you're putting it on the line when you do that. You have to be dead nuts certain the information that you're presenting is accurate and verifiable. This can't be a hunch. You can't use an equipment formula that the salesman who wants to sell you the equipment is using. You're going to have to, before you present this, you're going to have to go online. You're going to have to go to the library. You're going to have to get the information and know this stuff stone cold, and then have one of your friends who's a tech that you trust, because he is the asshole and he'll bring stuff up that you might not want to hear. Well, what about this? What about that? What about, so that you can answer those questions? Because the primary thing is, if you have an owner who's receptive, who is at the end of his rope and goes, okay, what the hell? It's not going to hurt anything. Let me try it. The answers that you give, the techniques that you're going to use, the strategies that you're going to use to improve the business have to be tried and true. They have to be verifiable, and you have to speak from a position of authority. If you feel that you can't do that, you have to be able to make the references to people and say, listen, here's a YouTube video. Here's a site that we can go to. Please watch this video. I'll stay with you. I'll get some pizzas. We'll watch it at night together. I've been watching this. I'm in contact with this person. Here's a mentor. Here's a shop owner who's very successful on the other side of town or the other part of the country, whatever it is, whatever sort of objection he can come up with, you have to have an answer for. Well, that's a different business than mine. No, it's the very same type of business. He has the same type of makeup of cars. He sees X amount of cars per month like we do. The demographic, according to city data, is this, which is very close to ours. You have to be able to do this because you're investing in yourself and you're becoming more than just an employee when you do that. Now, can he tell you to get bent? Sure, he can. Absolutely. And it wouldn't surprise me if he did. Then that's not the shop for you. Go somewhere else where you're appreciated. That's why this stuff is so important. Technical ability is great. And you should be proud, each and every one of you who has that technical ability, who can look and listen and read wiring diagrams and understand what it takes to get the car to be safe and reliable. That's commendable as hell, and you should be proud of that. But you're only having part of your education. Take a 3-legged stool and put 2 legs on it and tell me how stable that son of a bitch is. It isn't unless you're leaning it up against a wall. Right?
Yep. That's awesome.
That's what you need to think about. You have to be that 3-legged stool. Technical ability is just one part of that 3-legged stool.
I'll tell you that's definitely one area where I'm not great, is the business aspect of things. I spent a lot of time learning about a lot of stuff, but man, do I I fall short there. So I mean, that's a perfect example, though. Somebody who could be really good at the technical side of things and just, not care or not know anything about the business aspect of it. But it is a business at the end of the day, right? We're all trying to make money. So
you're in it. If you take a watch, an intricate watch, and you start removing components from that watch, the watch doesn't work. It only works together because everything is working together to produce the result that you want. Technicians have been undervalued for so long because they're using the intellect that they have, and a lot of guys are really, really effing smart, man. And they're channeling that intellect into figuring out systems without knowing anything else. Use the intellect. And, I'm not telling you got to be an Einstein, right? An Einstein. I don't care what the hell you want to pronounce. Right? You don't have to do that. But if you're going to be a well-rounded technician of value to your employer, or well-rounded enough that you say, this guy's a moron, I'm going to strike out on my own, at least now you know what the hell to rely on. So you have to know business numbers. You have to be able to understand technical aspect. Now let you guys tell me what you think the third leg is.
Well, you got to be able to deal with people, specifically your employees or employers. I think that's a skill to itself.
Yep, you have to do that. Okay, you're getting there. You're getting there. All right, what do you think, Mac? You're technically proficient. You're business savvy. What's the last thing that you have to be?
I just don't want to get that question wrong, but
you can't.
We're going to go. And I'm thinking from like a technician's standpoint, I'm thinking you got to be able to sell yourself.
Bingo. And that's exactly what Sean was hitting. That's exactly what it was. You have to know how to deal with people because you have to be able to present yourself. So you're not seen as this knuckle-dragging Neanderthal, right? Who is less than of a professional than the architect, than the doctor, than the lawyer, because that's it. That's the trifecta. That's the hat trick. You get those 3 things, you name your price, man. Because if you get arthritis and you can't work the line, you can't work the floor anymore, put you up front. Why can't you become a manager? You understand numbers. You understand people. You understand technical questions. So that's it. That's your well-rounded. That's what you need to do. The guys who just focus on being great diagnosticians, wonderful. Use your intellect to do the other 2 parts. The guy who says, listen, I'm a front-end man. I love front-end work. I kill it. I ton it in front-end work. That's great. Be more. Be better. Be better than you are. Get out. It's called you ever hear of an expression, a velvet rut?
Mm-mm.
Velvet rut.
Yep. You get to the point where you're comfortable, right? You're turning decent hours. You're only working 2 Saturdays a month, and it's no more than a half day. And you got your motorcycle, and you're driving cars. They're not the newest cars in the world. And you got a wife who's working. You're comfortable. That's a velvet rut. Because you could be more, do more, be better. But It's kind of comfortable in here. Why do I have to do anything else? That's what we're talking about. That's the velvet rut. Guys got to get out. Technicians have to get out of the velvet rut, because if you don't stand up for what you're worth in the market, if you don't emphasize your value to your employer and to the general public, you're never going to command the money that you want, ever. I don't care how much technicians are in demand. The fact is that if the general public doesn't see value in what you do, you're never going to make the money you want. And this goes back to side work. We came back where we started.
Yeah, full circle when you look at it with that perspective, right? Yeah. And what it really does mean to be a professional. Do you value what you do in this trade? Do you really think what you do is something that a professional should be doing? And if it is, you got to look at it from all these aspects, all these different things. It's more than just doing a brake job in a driveway, right? there's so much more to it than that. And young people obviously, understandably, don't get this. So I hope a few of them are listening to this, because it's tough to see the big picture, especially when you're that young, especially when you're getting into this trade and you're not making much money. It is tough to see that whole picture. So, we got to do our best, and people listening to this that are veterans of the trade got to do our best to educate everybody that we work with and that we employ and that we teach, that it is a valuable trade, and there is a way to be a professional in this trade. And if we all do that, we're going to make some more money.
Everything that I know, that people that are money motivated want to make more money. People that are service motivated, that want to be of service, that have like what I have, it's called a servant's heart. I want to be able to be of more service to my community. I want to be an advocate for my clients. The only way that I can do that is to ensure that my business is profitable and that I don't have high turnover. Because the people that come in a relationship-based business want to see the same faces over and over and over. There's a reason why at dealerships and most big box stores, technicians typically never meet the customers. They deal with the writers. The writer deals with the tech, because the transaction-based business model doesn't want that customer following that tech. Wants the customer to always go back to that store. The store becomes important. The people aren't. Well, what message does that send? It says, me as an employee, me as a technician, I'm a number. I'm not that important. Well, you're important to Mrs. Brown. She's got her kids in the car. She's got a 700-mile trip because she's got to go visit somebody who's sick, or she wants to go on vacation. You are important. She just doesn't realize it yet. Why? Because she's never looked you in the eye. You never smiled at her. Thanked her for coming in and meant it. Holy crap. Can you imagine that? If every tech here had to go to the person that was paying their salary and say, look, Sean, Mr. Tipping, we appreciate you coming by. Thank you. Have yourself a good time when you go to Disney. And walk back. What does that tell you? Everybody says, well, everything's electronic, and it is. People still yearn for the human connection.
COVID proved that.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
That hammered that home.
Big time. Big time. So, yeah, no, sometimes it gets frustrating for me because I see guys that are so effing talented and they'll waste their time doing stuff that's not going to be benefiting them in the long run. But you can lead a horse to water. You can't make them drink, right, guys? Now, you look, Matt, here's you have a success story because he was willing to go to his boss. Number one, to put his pride in his pocket, because this is a big deal, man. This is a big deal, going to your boss and going, listen, I believe in you and I'm willing to be proven wrong here, but this is what I think we need to do. A lot of guys would never do that. They wouldn't have the courage. They could never script the courage to do that. So, and then have the boss go, you know, you make a good point. Let's give it a whirl. What the hell, things couldn't get worse.
Yep.
It takes a lot of guts. A lot of guts.
And I mean, I credit him with listening and letting me have that sort of input. I mean, I don't think that can be overlooked.
No, it can't. It absolutely can't. You know, but
and then to be lucky enough for it to work, you know.
Yeah, but you didn't go into it blind, Matt.
Right.
I mean, I don't know you, but I know of your reputation. You didn't go in without doing your due diligence, right? You didn't go off half-cocked, go, oh, let's just try this.
No, not at all. Many hours of reading and paying attention. A lot of it's just trying to pay attention and hear the little things. You know, you mentioning ethical revenue generation, like that struck a chord with me. Like I keyed in on that because there definitely we have to produce hours. We have to produce a repaired vehicle or maintained vehicle, but my real goal is to generate ethical revenue for this business, and in that it becomes more profitable and also hopefully raises the that trust level, that reputation, right? That reputation that's really, really difficult to put a value on, right? A dollar amount, and then hopefully I get taken up with it and my station improves, be it wages, be it benefits, be it equipment around the shop, better working conditions, right? It just keeps going and going and going. Yeah. So many great points you made. I should have just been a spectator, but
no, not at all, man. Because what you've done is, whether you choose to believe it or not, you set the example because you did it. Sean sets the example by moving forward and holding this podcast and bringing idiots like me on, right? To recognize and be willing to make fun of himself, because let me tell you, brother, there's a lot that you can make fun of with me, to move the industry forward. Without that commitment, without Sean's commitment to the podcast and doing this, without your commitment to your employer and to the industry by doing this, nothing gets effing done. Nothing. You could have done exactly what you did and nobody would have heard about it. And your station might have improved as it has been. But how does that help anybody else?
Not a bit. Or a very, very small quantity of people that I tell, close circle of friends. But
see, that's the reason why I love this podcast, because it's of a servant's heart. Sean ain't getting rich. Nobody's flinging $100 bills at him by doing this. I mean, I wish somebody would, so the kid could dress better, because it really, God bless. Look at him.
If somebody wants to. I mean.
Yeah. Really, I mean, I'm thinking about it. Really, I'll get you a sweatshirt, son. Really, I mean, really, something. Oh my God, look at that. Really, people let you out of the house wearing that. You forgot what a razor looks like. I mean, come on. Oh my God. It all comes back, and that's why I was delighted to be asked here. And while I'll be on any time you want until you guys get effing bored of me, because the only way things improves is if guys like you two, and others step up and be counted and be risked to be made fun of. It's got to get done. Just got to get done, man.
There's no risk on my part. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion. I will be made fun of.
Not
if somebody else doesn't do it, I will do it.
you know.
Everybody's got something they can offer, something unique, a skill they have, and why? I don't know. You almost owe it to yourself and everybody else in the industry to make sure you take whatever talent or skill you have and put it out there and try to, like you said, rising tide brings up all ships, and so we can all do our part to whatever it is you're good at and you can offer. Obviously, both of you have unique skill sets that improve this industry, and you're doing it, and that's awesome. And that's what if everybody would do that, I don't have to explain where that's going to go, but if you got something, go for it.
What we have to do is get more people involved, because if you look at if you go to Vision, not the virtual Vision, or AST or any of the training, it's always the same group that goes.
Yep.
It's always the same cadre of people who are wanting to bring the profession forward, want to improve their lot in life, want to make their operations better or their life better. I need those people to grab the guy that's sitting on the fence, because I can't do it, right? Matt can't do it by himself. You can't do it. I need those people to say, you got a good operation, but you're struggling. Come on, let me grab you by the collar, and I'm going to drag your ass to these events. I'm going to sit down with you, and we'll watch the videos. You have to get involved. Without involvement, I don't give a shit how good you are at reading a P&L. I don't care how good you are at reading a wiring diagram. Without involvement, nothing happens without participation. That's the reason why I caught so much grief when I said the last broadcast about turn that fucking television off. That football player don't give a rat's ass about you. He's not going to pay your bills. Sometimes that's the velvet glove, man. That's where the guy is earning something, and it's a Saturday. Or he looks at it. The worst part about it is he goes, yeah, I made 50 hours this week, and this other job comes in, but I don't want to take it. I don't want to do it. I'm going to put it on next week because it's going to kill me for taxes. It's going to bring me to another tax bracket this week. I'm like, what the fuck is the matter with you? Yeah. In the interim, when you get to slow week, you're going to be crying, right? I only got 32 hours this week. Well, asswipe, you had the chance months back to bank this cash, but you chose not to because you were afraid of paying taxes. I bet you wish you had that money now, right? Oh well, back on the soapbox.
I loved working with techs like that at Firestone when I was a tech, but that's because I'd be the one grabbing those tickets.
Hell yes. Yes.
So, yeah. For certain people, man, you love working with people like that. Like, I just want to hit my 40 hours. All right, cool. I'm going to go for 90.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then you wonder why I'm driving around with a new Camaro. So, oh man. All right. You guys got anything else? Something you want to talk about? Matt, you got anything you want to know about numbers, balance sheet, cash flow, quick ratio?
We would be here a long time.
All right, that's going to do it for this one. I want to give another big thank you to Matt and Dutch for coming on the show, spending the time here to share their life experience. I mean, just a ton of wisdom and knowledge there to take from. I know I got something out of that. Hopefully you did as well, and hopefully you're enjoying the podcast. So I want to say thank you for listening if you made it this far. But other than that, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.